So there's a lot of talk in the sport of boxing right now between Canelo Alvarez and Jamal Charlo. Now, Canelo Alvarez is supposed to face Jamal Charlo because Charlo is supposedly his mandatory. Now, let's address that because this stuff needs addressing. Okay? Jamal Charlo has been in the wings for a while, waiting to be the top guy in the middleweight division. All right? So Triple G was supposed to be that guy because he ended up capturing the lineal title after Canelo Alvarez wasn't able to face him in the beginning of the negotiations. He had some legal issues that prevented him from being able to continue the negotiations. So, with that, the WBC ended up stripping him of that title. And they passed it over to Triple G, who did not face anybody for the title. That title was originally gathered by Canelo Alvarez from Cotto, and that's how he obtained the title. Triple G garnered the title without having to face anybody for it. So once they got in the ring and they faced off Canelo Alvarez and Triple G, he was beaten twice, that being Triple G. So the belts go over to Canelo Alvarez, which makes him the lineal superstar in the division. He just solidified that by capturing, I believe, the WBA. If I'm wrong, you guys can correct me in the comments section. But he just beat a quote unquote virtual bum to obtain that title and solidify his stature and his place in the middleweight division as the middleweight king. So the issue is that Triple G was supposed to face Jamal Charlo. That was his mandatory. That didn't happen. He skipped over his mandatory and he took on Canelo Alvarez and he lost. With that, the fight with Charlo was diminished. So everybody is out there screaming that Canelo Alvarez is running away from Jamal Charlo because now supposedly Jamal Charlo is next in line to face off against this guy for the title, which isn't accurate. Okay? So let's say this. He does deserve his shot. At the end of the day, who has Jamal Charlo faced? Now, had he gotten in the ring and took on Danny Jacobs? Had he gotten in the ring and took on Billy Joe Saunders? Had he gotten in the ring and took on Andretti? We'd be having a different conversation right now. And that's not to say that that's his fault because these guys have not tried to get in the ring with him either. The only one that I can even think of that has said anything to Charlo is Danny Jacobs. And we haven't seen anything materialize since they faced off in the hallway on the cameras. So here's the issue. Canelo Alvarez is the face of boxing. Okay? And I can take you through the history of what that means, but it will take entirely too long for me to get to my point. And this video will be way over 10 minutes long, and we don't want to do that. I don't want to waste you guys' time. So let's get to why this fight is not going to happen anytime soon. Because now Danny Jacobs is in the mist. He's the guy that is supposed to come in and take on Canelo Alvarez. He has now staked his claim as the guy that's supposed to be next to take on the likes of Canelo Alvarez. His stature is cemented a lot better than what Charlo's is because this guy has taken on Triple G, and that fight pushed Triple G to the brinks. And even though he got the win, a lot of fans out there will agree and disagree, and say that Danny Jacobs took him all the way to the 12th round after being knocked down in the second round of their fight and outboxed Triple G. But a lot of Triple G fans will say, well, he garnered the knockdown, so that automatically solidified him to be the victor in this fight, in that fight. And we all know that that's not really how boxing goes. But that's a part of it. And Triple G ended up getting out of there with the victory. So, with that said, nobody is going to sit and say that Danny Jacobs is a bum. He's a pushover. He's a guy that doesn't deserve his shot because he truly does. He has a name for himself. He's garnered a pretty good career for himself. Yet and still, he's not seen as the boogeyman in the division right now. That guy would be Jamal Charlo. So Danny Jacobs is not going to be in line for the fight, and neither is Charlo. And the reason why I say that is because Billy Joe Saunders is standing in the way. And Triple G is on the outskirts creating problems as well because he wants another shot at obtaining the title. But since he lost twice, pretty much back to back against Canelo, he's kind of out of the picture. But he's still there to create enough noise for things not to materialize the way that they should. And the reason why I say that is because if you want Danny Jacobs to get in the ring with Canelo Alvarez, he's going to have to do a lot more than what he's done in the past against Triple G. He's going to have to take on the likes of Billy Joe Saunders, or he's going to have to get in there with Charlo. Now, these are the fights, the four guys that the fans are clamoring for. This is what the middleweight division is pretty much, found. This is what it's about. This is the cornerstone for the middleweight division. Now, Jacobs doesn't want to have to do that in order to get in the ring with Canelo. But at the end of the day, that's what is going to happen for the lineal title. It has to happen that way in order to build Danny Jacobs up because he doesn't have a true fan base. He hasn't become the face of boxing. So his fan base is the boxing fan base. We as hardcore boxing fans know who Danny Jacobs is. But the casual fan base is the fan base that is going to come in and hype things up and take things to a different level, take things to a different stratosphere. So Danny Jacobs is not going to get his shot the way that he thinks he's going to get it. With that being said, Canelo Alvarez is going to be forced to take on the likes of Billy Joe Saunders first in order to build up Danny Jacobs. And that's how the negotiations are going to go. He's going to have to take on this guy, Billy Joe Saunders. And when he does, that fight is going to end in controversy. Okay? I'm not going to get into how I know this. I just know. It's going to end in controversy. And when it does, that's going to force another fight with Billy Joe Saunders. Then on the outskirts is going to be Triple G because he hasn't gotten his shot for his third fight with Canelo Alvarez to try to obtain that title. So what's going to happen with that is when that does take place with Billy Joe Saunders, that's going to push Danny Jacobs and Canelo Alvarez back another year. Now, Danny Jacobs is not going to sit around doing nothing. And of course, if he wants this fight to materialize the way that it has to, then he's going to have to take on somebody that is going to garner him the number one position, to fight Triple G next. So he's going to have to take on two guys, maybe three. Charlo, Triple G, or he'll have to try to take out Billy Joe Saunders. Now we know Saunders is not going to do that because he's going to feel that due to the controversy in that fight between him and Canelo Alvarez, that Canelo didn't beat him outright. So he's not going to take on another competitor to face Canelo Alvarez right off the bat. Canelo Alvarez is going to move on because he's going to continue to carry the sport and he's going to make his money. So he'll probably take on somebody like David Lemieux. He'll face David Lemieux in the meantime. Okay. So now in the background is going to be guys saying that Canelo is scared because he took on somebody else outside of the names that he should be taking on, which would be Jamal Charlo, Danny Jacobs, Triple G. Okay. So Danny Jacobs will have to cancel out Triple G and Jamal Charlo. So he would have to more than likely get in the ring with one of these guys very soon. So he probably had to end up taking on Triple G because that fight the fans still remember and the fights are still clamoring for the rematch. And so is Danny Jacobs. So Danny Jacobs would have to get in and cancel out Triple G because Canelo Alvarez definitely doesn't want to have to face this guy for a third time. So Danny Jacobs will be used as a pawn to take down Triple G, okay? Or Saunders or Charlo. So even after Triple G gets in the ring with Jacobs, and let's say Jacobs wins, okay, um, he's still going to be pushed back a year because Billy Joe Saunders is going to want his shot even after the David Lemieux fight. Okay? So Jamal Charlo is going to be screaming and yelling and being Clubber Lane in the background because he's not getting his shot. But he's not getting his shot based on strategy. Okay? It's based on strategy. They're waiting him out. He doesn't have a fan base, and they would have to spend too much time building Charlo up. So instead of him being smart and playing chess instead of checkers and fighting, taking on the stiff competition, he's going to be in the background crying and screaming because these guys are not going to want to get in the ring with him due to the fact that he doesn't have a solid fan base. Okay, so they're not going to make money off of him. Okay, it'll be a tough, hard, grinded out fight, with this young, hungry lion with, great risk, low reward. So nobody wants that right now because they feel like they've already paid their dues, these guys that's on the screen right now. So Canelo will be forced to have to face Billy Joe Saunders since Triple G is now out of the picture should Danny Jacobs beat him. So now Danny Jacobs is waiting in the wings to find out what's going to happen between Canelo and Billy Joe. So Jamal Charlo is waiting in the wings as well. So while that's happening, these two is they're gonna have a second fight, and let's say Canelo Alvarez beats Billy Joe Saunders. Now, is he gonna take on Charlo immediately or Danny Jacobs immediately after that fight? It's not gonna happen. What's gonna happen is Danny Jacobs is gonna be forced to have to take on Jamal Charlo, because they're gonna go at each other because they realize that one of the two of them is gonna have to try to get in that number one spot to be able to be next in line to face Canelo Alvarez for that big payday. So they're gonna have a fight off as well. So however this fight turns out, you would hope that Danny Jacobs is the one to beat Charlo because Charlo doesn't have the stature that Danny Jacobs has, especially after beating Triple G in the second matchup. So he'll be forced to have to face Charlo, or he can take on somebody else in the division. And that would have to be Andretti in the background, or if Jared Hurd decides he wants to move up and wait a little bit and go outside of the light middleweight and fight at a heavier weight in middleweight, then he could take on the likes of him. But I don't think that would happen. I think Danny Jacobs would sit back and wait and for his opportunity, and they will force Jamal Charlo to fight um, Jared Hurd, not Hurd, but Andretti. He would be forced to have to fight him, and one of those two would have to cancel each other out. So whoever wins that fight would be waiting in the wings to see who's going to take on Danny Jacobs um, before Canelo Alvarez. So with that said, Danny Jacobs will have to fight the winner of the Charlo and Andretti fight. So let's say Danny Jacobs wins. Now we get the Canelo Alvarez fight with Danny Jacobs. Okay? So that's exactly how that fight is going to go. All right? So at the end of it all, that fight is going to take at least 2 years to materialize, maybe even 3. But they won't stretch it out that long. It would have to be maybe 2 years before that fight even takes place. So I don't understand why everybody's running their mouth in the background saying that this man, the face of boxing, is afraid to face Charlo. It's all about the business of boxing, people. You gotta learn the business of boxing if you're gonna watch boxing. All right? So I'm done with this video. I'm going to move on to the next one. But depending on the comments that come in, we can debate this topic further. But I just had to address it because I'm just hearing a lot of nonsense out there. And I just had to, put my little 2 cents in and make sure that I kill that nonsense. All right, man. I put together some scenarios for you guys. I tried to make this stuff make sense. So there it is. I'm on to the next one. I'm out.